Isn't it true that anybody can implode a building straight down just by placing a bunch of explosives around?
There are many steps that you need to take. The first off is you have to weaken the building, and that's after a lot of studies have gone into how the building is built in the first place. To weaken the building, that means the staircase, all the staircases have to be cut at intervals. The firewalls have to be removed. The elevator shafts have to be cut and the rails cut, as well as the cars themselves removed. And then you have to move to the support columns on the particular load floors, and those are cut by a torch for two reasons. First, to weaken them, and also to allow for charges to be placed onto the structure or onto the columns themselves. And that essentially reduces their strength by about 20%. And even with all of that work being done to weaken this building, it still remains safely standing, so we can continue to work in it. The story that just a few columns can cause a synchronized global collapse, an implosion, is, well, that's just nonsense. After the prepping work has been done, then it's time to load the building. And in the case of a steel frame building, that means we load them with RDX cutting charges, which are loaded with individual delays, sometimes as many as 2 to 3 different delays on a given floor. So you have to understand the work is complex and precise and requires years of experience. We were told by the NIST report that fire caused one column to fail, and from that point we had a global collapse of the building in a classic implosion. I don't see how this could actually happen in real life. When we load a building, we have to have all the support columns on a given load floor fail at the same time, within milliseconds of one another, and therefore the entire building comes down in a synchronized implosion. So I think this notion of a one column failure causing an entire building to implode in a synchronized fashion is just nonsense. Looking at the building, it wouldn't be a problem once you gained access to the elevator shafts. Then a team of loading experts would have access to all the core columns and beams. The rest could be accomplished at that point by just the right kind of explosives for the job at hand. The choices are many out there. Well, I've worked on buildings, steel frame buildings, where essentially you load only the bottom third of the building, and that causes the building to implode. Yes, we have loaded buildings in that fashion where just the core support columns are loaded, and we don't necessarily have to load the outside perimeter columns to have this building come down successfully. With steel frame buildings, you don't have to load all the floors to have a successful implosion. Only the bottom third of the building needs to be loaded to have a successful implosion. For instance, I worked on a building in Hartford, Connecticut, the CNG building, where we did just that. You wouldn't need miles and miles of det cord. You could have used wireless remote detonators, and they have been available for years. You need to only look at an action movie to see them in use, and of course the military has them as well. Contractors don't use them, on the other hand, because they're just too expensive. Well, you wouldn't have found steel casings to be left in the rubble. They haven't been used for years. What we use now is RDX copper-jacketed shape charges, and when they're initiated, there's nothing left of those charges. And in the case of thermite, well, thermite self-consuming cutting charges have been around since they first patented in 1984. So there would be nothing left in the debris pile except some residue of molten iron. Well, the key word here is controlled demolition, and I emphasize the word controlled. We use careful placement of the charges. They're always focused and precise, and we're just not talking about setting off a bomb here. Plus, the amount and type of explosives can pretty well take care of any collateral damage. With any implosion, you don't hear one massive boom sound. What you do hear is smaller explosions going off, which leads up to the implosion of the building. Mr. Sunder of NIST has said that if this had been a controlled demolition, you would have heard a large, massive bomb going off, a big boom. He says what in reality happens with a controlled demolition is you hear a successive, progressive smaller waves of smaller explosions going off, and that leads to the successful implosion of the building. In the case of thermite cutting charges, you would have heard far less noise, since they are worked by thermal heating, melting of the steel, rather than an explosive cutting as in RDX charges. Now, regarding the criticism that this couldn't have been a controlled demolition because the building apparently exhibited a bit of lean as it came down, well, in my experience, this isn't exactly precise. The buildings can lean a bit as they come down with any implosion. I knew from day one that this was a controlled event. And why I did that is because simply looking at Building 7, you have a sudden collapse of the building. It's fairly symmetrical as it comes down. There's the classic kink, which means that the center core fails first, and you can see that on the video, and the building falls near free fall. So I really honestly didn't believe this from day one, because this is the way buildings classically come down with a controlled demolition. I want to emphasize that I in no way represent CDI, and what I have to say is based solely on my own working experience and training while working for them. This NIST report is very suspect, because I would have expected in a classic implosion, as I've seen numerous times, is the core to fail. Essentially, what I'm saying is the core, I would expect the center of the building to start moving first. And then as the implosion progresses, then the sides come in, then the rest of the building is involved. So this idea that it's started on one side, and all of a sudden the core starts moving at this, as this thing progresses, is just doesn't make sense. What I saw, it was a classic implosion. The center of the core, the penthouse area, starts to move first, and then the building follows along with it. So the idea that it started on one corner from one column off in the side, therefore the core was involved starting from that corner, just doesn't make sense. It's not how it works. Well, again, if you listen to the testimony of people on the ground, they're reporting exactly what I would have expected. I mean, I've been to all the implosions that when I was working at CDI. Again, as you point out, I photographed them. And what you hear is waves of explosions going off, not one massive big boom, but you hear boom, 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 boom. Go back and listen to the tapes of the police officers and people on the ground, and the firemen as well. They're reporting exactly what I would expect. You're hearing boom, 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 boom as these different floors start to fail. So again, what I'm hearing from what people were there is exactly what I would have expected. You don't break glass. So collateral damage, windows breaking for blocks around, that kind of thing, it just doesn't happen if it's a controlled demolition.
Now, you've listened to Tom Sullivan. I'll ask you, well, who had control of security over the entire World Trade Center complex? Now, remember in '93 when it was bombed, we learned later that it was the FBI that gave them the explosives and the detonators, trained the drivers, and it came out in the court case because the guy taped the FBI saying, let him go ahead, we're gonna handle it. So that was 1993, but now when it's 2001, who ran security at the World Trade Center? Was that Marvin Bush? Was that his company Securicom? Boy, these names keep coming up, huh? Boy, it was the other Bush who got the Bush elected, right, down in Florida. We forget those things. But once again, not that it's Bush or it's Obama. It's always the same people behind him. Do you think we'd be attacking Libya, as Gerald Celente once said, if broccoli was their biggest, product? What are you producing this year? Well, we're producing bushels of broccoli. Who has the world's largest reserves of oil in the continent of Africa? Known reserves, that is. Gee, they're not known for broccoli, are they? Yet, it's okay that if the Saudis move the funds and the money and the people, the Al-Qaeda guys, CIA, into Libya so they can be the rebels, and then 26 hours after the UN says, hey, we should make a no-fly zone because humanitarian, and so we send cruise missiles in and shoot depleted uranium because that's humanitarian. Don't you see they fund both sides? And they've co-opted your military. They've co-opted your government to where now they tell you it's good. It's good to torture people. Remember waterboarding? That's okay. Abu Ghraib? That's okay. That's good. That's good. You're a good American. You torture people. Oh, nobody went, oh, wait. That's right. People did go to jail for that. But not the guys who ordered it, huh? Because they're so above you. They're above your family, too. And by the way, if you think they don't like Iraqi babies, once again, we want to type in the words depleted uranium, Fallujah. If you think they like Iraqi babies more than they like your babies, you may have to learn a little bit about how they treat babies. These people don't like people. So anyway, we left off with Tom Sullivan. Let's go right now to some 9/11 truth for you. What was in Building 7? Who ran Building 7? Who benefited? Aren't you attorneys, right? Sharon's full of attorneys. Cui bono, who benefits? Who benefited from this 9/11 thing? Do you really think it was turban-headed guys in caves? Yeah. Who's selling you this clash of civilizations? But anyway, let's find out who benefited.
People appear to have known the imminent future on that fateful day. FEMA had arrived in New York on Monday night, ready for a bioterror drill. Spokesman Tom Kenny to Dan Rather.
To be honest with you, we arrived on late Monday night and went into action on Tuesday morning. And not until today did we get a full opportunity to work the entire site other than the spot at Church and Day to which we were deployed.
And Rudy Giuliani, mayor of New York, tells ABC's Peter Jennings that he was aware the towers would be coming down.
What is going on now is a massive rescue effort.
Do you believe it's hundreds or thousands?
I really don't want to say right now, Peter. I think it's going to be a horrible number. I saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. I saw some of the firefighters who I know going into the building. And we were in a building in which we were trapped for about 10-15 minutes. And we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management. And we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. The World Trade Center was going to collapse. It was going to collapse. It was going to collapse.
Similarly, Larry Silverstein, new leaseholder of the World Trade Center, regretfully declared that a decision was made to pull Building 7 by the end of the day, the last structure added to the World Trade Center complex. Let's hear Mr. Silverstein's actual words, delivered for our benefit in the 2002 PBS documentary, America Rebuilds.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Blast, shoot, blow, and pull are terms used in the demolition industry to refer to bringing down buildings, bridges, and other structures.
Because I actually blew the hospital down that I was born in.
Originally, we had figured to shoot it, let it drop straight down.
Then, watch Demolition Dynamics attempt a big blast.
And from Ground Zero's own post-disaster wrecking crew.
By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull Building 6.
Silverstein, a commercial real estate tycoon with international political connections, acquired a 99-year lease on the World Trade Center complex in the spring of 2001. Throughout the summer, he reworked the insurance policies on his new property, making sure that it was covered for acts of terrorism. Explicit in the lease agreement was Silverstein's right to rebuild the complex if it were destroyed. After 9/11, Mr. Silverstein fought his insurers in court to obtain double his policy limits for the destruction of his property, maintaining that the double hijacking constituted 2 disasters caused by terrorists, not just one. He won, and was awarded over $7 billion, a magnificent return on his original $15 million investment.
My first reaction is to think about the families of those people, the tragedy, the magnitude of it. However, I firmly believe that we should rebuild.